Good afternoon and welcome to the second annual Orange County Realtors Safety Week. Again, I'm Scott White. I'm the 2022 President-elect for Orange County Realtors. And we are going to be blessed by a great presentation today. So I'm going to talk about how we are blessed to live in Southern California, which is a place with sunshine all year round, a little bit of rain, and many backyard pools. On the flip side, we must be aware of the dangers of drowning and be prepared for a wildfire to strike our backyard, as we've seen all too often in recent years. Today, we're going to give a big welcome to Sean Duran from Orange County Fire Authority, who will be giving us some critical information about wildfire preparation as well as drowning prevention. Sean joined Orange County Fire Authority in 2004. He served in the following roles of paramedic, EMS instructor, cadre member, and currently he serves as fire captain and public information officer. He lives in Mission Viejo with his wife, 2 daughters, and 2 dogs. He enjoys traveling, camping, backpacking, and YMCA's Adventure Princess program with his daughters. Thank you for joining us today, Sean, and take it away.
Thanks for involving us today. It's an honor to be here. I know Orange County Association of Realtors represents a large group of not only business people, but residents, community members. And together, this whole presentation is about us working together as public, as business members, and as the fire authority. We all have a role to play in the topics we're going to discuss today. And I'm looking forward to us being teammates to achieve success in the arena of wildfire and drowning prevention, both very important topics.
Is carbon monoxide required in single-family residence? I'm assuming that means carbon monoxide detectors.
They are, and I know, and obviously consult with each city, but state requirement is to have a carbon monoxide detector in the home, as well as the smoke alarms. If you want to go to our webpage at ocfa.org, we have some details regarding placement of those. In terms of the smoke alarms, we have them on each floor, hallway leading to each sleeping area, and then in each sleeping area. And a carbon monoxide detector, I believe, on each floor as well. Carbon monoxide mixed pretty freely with air. So in terms of height, I think they have them, roughly mid height on the wall. But just keep in mind that with the oxygen flow through the house and airflow through the house, the carbon monoxide mixes really freely with that. So as long as you have one in there, that's all we're looking for. While we definitely don't have, this rash of carbon monoxide deaths in the county, it's a silent killer. So we don't have a way to know it's coming until it has come. So we definitely want to have those in there, and especially for your home buy and home selling, I know there's going to be a requirement.
Just a thought to that, you said that we haven't had a rash of carbon monoxide deaths, but since there's been the requirement for the detectors for at least the last, 10 years, do you think that has had an appreciable difference in the decrease in the carbon monoxide deaths in the county?
It's good. I can't speak to the data on it. However, I do know also an improvement in home construction and appliances and awareness, for people not to, for example, bring barbecues inside the home or bring propane heaters inside the home, not to make any modifications. So a lot of public education is out there. We get a lot of calls for carbon monoxide and smoke alarms beeping, and oftentimes it's related to just maintenance. They need to have their batteries changed, be rotated when their expiration date comes along, cleaned regularly with a brush and a vacuum to get the dust out. So some people pull them off because they don't like the nuisance alarms, but it's a quick fix, it's a quick change. If you can't figure it out, give us a call. We're happy to come out there and take care of it. But at the end of the day, it's something that you don't see coming, and you're usually asleep when it happens and you don't wake up. So they're vitally important, and I actually have more than the required in my house, just because I'm a little hyper vigilant and want to make sure that my resting family wakes up. So emergency response, this is kind of what we're used to seeing on the road. This is the fire engines, the fire trucks, the helicopters, the response you see coming down the street. But it also includes our 911 call center, our airport crash rescue. We're out at John Wayne as the crash rescue fire department there. We also have confined space rescue, trench rescue, collapse rescue via our urban search and rescue team and our technical rescue trucks. Obviously, our EMS section, which comprises of EMTs, paramedics. We have a robust nursing section here that maintains our CEs, hazmat, heavy rescue. We work with law enforcement as part of a joint hazard assessment team. It's a lot of depth and breadth to be the Orange County Fire Authority and serve Orange County appropriately. So rest assured, we do have that. And that's a great part about this organization. There's a lot to learn and a lot to offer. Go to the next slide, please. So it's, again, roughly about almost 1,100 firefighters in the field, and approximately 50 plus of us assigned to special assignments, basically through headquarters, where there's public information officer, air operations, investigations, wildland crews and equipment. So we have about 1,100 to 1,200 operation personnel, meaning the people that you see on the street on a day-to-day basis. And continuing on. And then on ECC, just get an idea of what we are. In 2020, they answered 196,000 plus calls. On average, they received 538 calls a day and dispatched 407 incidents daily. So we are a very busy department. And then our professional staff, we are a joint powers association. So we're a conglomerate of all these cities and the unincorporated county. So together, instead of having each city have their own management of this portion of the fire department, we run it as a whole here at the Orange County Fire Authority and the Regional Fire Operations and Training Center in Irvine. And next. In volunteer opportunities, I was talking before this started, there's lots of opportunities here. So if you have any family members that are looking at the fire service or law enforcement, just kind of service industry back to the community, we have a chaplain program. We accept college interns at various times. We have a robust fire cadet, formerly known as the Fire Explorer Academy, reserve firefighters, a lot of opportunities for the community to get involved with our department. And next one. All right, so let's get to the meat of this. Let's talk about wildfires. We're going to go through some quick stats, suggestions, ideas, resources, and then we'll go through some feedback on your end. So wildfire impacts as we just enter September and October. So I was getting the data about 48 hours ago to try and get this as current as we can. So 2021, January 1st to current, we're roughly at 2.2 million acres burned in California. At this time last year, roughly 3.1 million acres. Currently, we're sitting at approximately 7,300 fires versus 7,900 fires last year. 2020, as we all know from watching the news, was unfortunately a historic year with 4.2 plus million acres and just shy of 10,000 fires. So you look at these stats and think, okay, great, we're ahead of the curve. We're doing great, and that very well could be. We know, however, that the data shows our fuels, meaning the grasses, the brush, the hills we live in, are at critical moisture levels, and that is something that is undeniable. So we are right. So as we know, September and October for Southern California is the time we often get hit, and that is directly related to the wind events we have. So we're just entering that season right now, and we want to keep these numbers below last year. So they are lower, but it's not for us to sit back and rest on our laurels, as we've seen with the activity in Northern California, to which we've actually sent multiple resources, and they'll reciprocate when it's our turn as well. We have some heavy months ahead of us. And as you know, last year we went into December with brush fires down here. So we're looking at those numbers now and keeping a close eye on them, hoping we get to enter 2022 with numbers below last year. Next slide. So we're talking about making informed decisions, and is your home ready? Is your client's home ready? So I've tried to think about this from your angle a little bit in terms of how can you help your clients and help you make them feel more comfortable about their decisions. So, as you can see there on the left, that's what this looks like. That's what brush fires coming through look like. As you peek through the middle slides, you see some homes hit, some homes standing. Look to the right, you have one home standing. So we're going to discuss, why do those homes remain standing when the other ones right next to it burned right down? Continue on. So one of the issues, especially what we deal with down here, is embers. We mentioned that we are recipients of these strong wind events, locally known as the Santa Anas. And while we might think, hey, I'm in North Mission Viejo, or I'm in Southern Irvine, I'm not butting up against the wildland arena. But we're not so concerned just with those frontage homes. We have to remember these embers can fly up to 3 to 5 miles from the fire. So even though your home isn't necessarily adjacent to the hills, it is still susceptible. And where is it susceptible? Roofs, gutters, eaves, vents, windows, exterior walls, decks and patio covers, vegetation management. And it doesn't seem like that any of those can make that big of a difference, but one small ember that you probably wouldn't even see during the daylight sitting there festering in any of these bad environments is enough to have a home basically light off at some point when you're not expecting it. But we're going to continue on the next slide and discuss what we can do. So home hardening. So if you're out with a client or in the neighborhood, you're getting to know, maybe you're canvassing it and speaking to the neighbors and the HOAs, talking to the cities, what are some of the things you can do to identify a home that is defendable? Because we need to think worst case scenario here. There's some triage that goes into what we do. When we have a fire front moving through quickly and resources still coming, homes do get triaged. So if we show up to a home that is, made of exposed wood, there's ladder fuels, meaning bushes right up against it. There's just a lot of access for things to get inside the home, and it's going to be hard for us to defend. We do some quick work on it, but we have to move along to basically do the most good for the most people. So at some point, we have to decide which homes have done the work ahead of time that we have the best chance of defending in multiplicity. So we want to encourage everybody to do their part before the fire comes and not rely on just the fire department showing up, because again, these are fire fronts moving through with all of us trying to get in while everybody's evacuating, and we're doing our best work. But as you see from every fire from Northern California to Southern California, not every home can be saved. So we got to do the best to protect ourselves. So look at these on the side. You see those the exposures in the roof tiles and exposures on the fascia. Those are all areas where embers can enter. So we want to look to hardening those. And non-combustible roofs, protect the openings, box the eaves. A lot of this comes with new home construction now based on the current fire code, but most of us, or a lot of us, don't live in the most up-to-date fire code home. So it's incumbent upon us and your clients and some education to say, you know what, I understand your concern with this home, but here's a few things I know we can do. Let's talk to a contractor about X, Y, and Z. All right, moving on. Vents even, looking at the attic vents that are in most homes, that's another way for things to get in, but not just mice and rats and stuff like that, but embers. So look at covering the vents with this 1/8 inch metal mesh. These aren't necessarily all expensive repairs that somebody has to do. So if you're looking at a home and you're talking about closing and they see a couple things that just don't sit right, well, you can remind them there's some things that can be done that aren't necessarily going to cost a lot of money to accomplish, but will go a long way in fire prevention. Continuing on. Decks and patios, making sure they're ignition resistant. The stat here is 80% of homes start from an ember, and 90% of those homes that start are ultimately destroyed. So once the home gets going and it's well involved and we're in a fire front approaching and the fire service shows up, once that home is already well involved, there's fire in the attic, there's fire in the house, that's where that stat comes from. 90% of these homes are going to be destroyed. So we need to stop the embers from getting in there from the get-go. And again, these aren't necessarily massive renovations. Depending on the budget of your client, this could be just redoing the deck or patio in a different material, removing the deck or patio, removing the ladder fuels next to it, not having wood furniture adjacent to it, maybe replacing mulch with gravel. There's a lot of options that aren't necessarily going to break the bank. And next page. And then vegetation management. So a lot of this we know, depending where you live, is incumbent upon the HOAs. So some of this we're not necessarily going to have direct control over, but it's a conversation worth having. So maybe before you're out there with the clients and you get to know the neighborhood, talk to the HOA, talk to the city, talk to the fire department, and find out the efforts that are being made to mitigate and manage the fuels, so we can kind of gauge the approach of the fire before it gets there. But as we'll discuss in a little bit, vegetation management and fuel mitigation, again, isn't the cure-all, because we still have to manage the fire brands on the actual physical home. Continuing. So just kind of a quick glance at that. So the fuel modification, as you can see, it's replacing our native fuels with fire resistant plants. And these photos are showing more of an HOA type situation. However, if somebody wants to visit ocfa.org, we have plant lists that are ideal for fire resistance and can give many people many options, so they realize they're not limited to, let's say, ice plants or succulents. There are options for people to modify their own fuel around their own home. Continuing. So here's what we're talking about. So vegetation management will reduce the risk of direct flame or radiant heat from the interface, meaning if your home happens to be that home right up against that mitigated fuel, that is going to benefit you. However, it's not going to stop the ember production from the open space. So it's important to have, and this is a team effort, and it's no one piece of the puzzle that is fire prevention on its own. But vegetation management, along with home hardening, will give their home a better chance of surviving a wildfire. So if you're out in these interface areas trying to figure out how to help a person sell their home that might be in an urban interface and there's concerns about the buyer, or you have a buyer and you're trying to work with them to get the home sold, there are avenues we can manage together to make it a more defendable home. Continuing. So is their home ready? Basically, it's removing the fuels, if not reducing, and finally replacing. So the 3 R's there is a pretty quick snapshot of what you can think about as you're seeing a home, the outside of the home. What can I remove, reduce, or replace? And finally here, our Ready, Set, Go program. And this is not a local program. This relates to all the urban interface in the country. And basically what this is doing is taking some of the onus and putting it on the residents. Because again, there's not gonna be enough firefighters to sit on every home during every fire. It's gonna be triage, it's gonna be doing the best for the most. So we rely on everybody to be the teammates in this. So Ready, Set, Go, taking a look here, the ready part is taking personal responsibility, preparing long before the threat of a wildfire so your home is ready. So it's not waiting until July, August, September, October to take a look at your home. It's now. It's in the fall, the winter, the spring, all year long, taking a look at your home and making sure what can we do to give our home the best chance of survival. The set part is making sure if the fire front does come, that you don't have to think about what to grab, think about where you're going. You can just pack your vehicle with the emergency items, stay aware of the latest news from the media, the fire department for information, and when the time comes, you go and they leave early. And that seems pretty obvious, but we understand the concept of wanting to stay home and defend your castle. That's by nature, we're humans, we want to do that. But we run the risk of you getting out too late and us coming at the same time, traffic accidents, down power lines, your escape route is cut off. We have to attend to your medical emergency instead of fight the fire. There's so many issues that come along with that we really want to encourage people to leave early. You have your life, you have your valuables, your family members, your pets, whatever it is you need, and you get out early and let us get to work. Next slide. So on our website, you talk about kits. September actually happens to be National Preparedness Month. So these kits apply to any emergency, but specifically for today, for the wildfire preparedness. And they address the flashlights, food and water, first aid, clothes. We also rely on our cell phones quite a bit. During one of the fires we had in the canyon last year, cell service was out, and that affected the fire department and that affected the residents. So we have to think of alternatives when our phones don't work, for example, and you're at work and your kiddos are at school. What's your plan? Where are you going to meet if you can't communicate? You need to have an outside area for everybody to show up to in case there's no communication, because we saw that happen. And finally, the 6 Ps: people and pets, phone numbers and papers, prescriptions, eyeglasses, pictures, that memorabilia, personal computers, and plastic or cash. So those 6 Ps are a quick snapshot. However, we do have an extensive assembly kit list and evacuation plan list at ocfa.org. Continuing on. And then, are you prepared? So Alert OC, actually, I just got the test on my phone this morning. It's encourage everybody in Orange County to sign up at Alert OC to receive major event notifications. It's just one quick way that the canyon will get to you and let you know that there's something happening and what is it and who is it affecting. And part of that, create your family plan. Do it together, practice it, make sure it makes sense, that you can actually execute it. All these ideas and tips, again, can be found at ocfa.org, but just start having the idea in your mind that, hey, we need to set aside an hour or two to actually put this plan into play at home to make sure it works. Next slide. And then again, just reiterating, taking personal responsibility and share the information. So if you happen to live in one of these areas that might be affected, get together with your neighbors, have a talk, have a local HOA meeting and discuss, hey, what is our plan? And here's what I've learned, and here's some resources we can use. But we need to take care of each other as a community as a whole and look out for each other. So we really want to encourage the sharing of all the information to make sure as a community, we are ready for it. Continuing. And so this is just off the top of my head. I'm not in the realtor's shoes, but I definitely want to try and tailor this a little bit towards y'all. So how can you assist your buyers and sellers? And I'm sure, being the professionals you are, this is probably a commonplace, old hat, and you've already checked these boxes, but just in case. Speak with the neighbors. So in these wildland urban interface areas, what have they learned? What lessons have they learned and that can they share to your buyer or seller? Obviously, speak to the association. How do they prepare? What is their fuel modification plans? Are they executing it? Talk to the local city. What do they tell their residents? How do they inform their residents of emergencies? What are their evacuation plans? And then provide resources. So talk to them about evacuation zones. If they have horses or cattle, discuss with them animal evacuation resources. And then finally, maybe you can dovetail us in with some closing gift ideas in terms of emergency kits as part of your closing gift. Or present them with a packet of the just in case. Here's, for example, City of Lake Forest, emergency evacuation zones, areas you can get to, planned escape routes. There's a lot of work you can do, I think, that would show the buyer or the seller that you're vested in their particular community. Again, I respect this might be all old hat, so I don't want to speak to the choir on that. And then finally, we are here for you with safety handouts, any information you need. We encourage you to follow us during fires on Twitter, Instagram, social media, and Sheriff, OC.gov Sheriff website. When we have a big fire, we basically report to a command center as a county. So the sheriff, all the agencies that have a say in the game, and we try and put out the same message on a regular basis. So keep in tune with us via social media. So first of all, thank you guys for putting up with the technical difficulties, and thank you for rescuing that. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Sean, I've got a few in the Q&A section for you. Some are more generic, and maybe some were even answered by your presentation, but let's go through these real quickly and see if we can touch on them. Someone's asking here, where can we take partially used or expired fire extinguishers?
That's a great question. So ideally, through the Orange County hazardous waste area. If you look under Orange County hazardous waste, they'll have areas we can drop those off. But before you get rid of them, because we get a lot dropped off at the fire station, before you get rid of them, take them outside with your family, find an area, a trash can, for example, that you can use, and practice deploying that fire extinguisher. It seems silly. Grab the extinguisher, pull, aim, squeeze, sweep, we say. But until you picked it up, pulled that pin and actually squeezed it and felt it, the tension, and then finally the release of the chemical agent, you don't know what it's like. So we always encourage people, before you recycle those, get rid of them, take it to an area where the product will be confined, for example, a trash can, and practice as a family using those.
Great answer. Thank you very much. Second question. This is a tag on to the earlier question about the carbon monoxide. So smoke detectors are installed on the ceiling. What's the best location to install carbon monoxide detectors? That's a good question. The latest I've seen is on the wall or near the ceiling. So if you have them anywhere near the smoke detector, that's going to be appropriate. They do have some that plug in as well. So and they're all different. So if someone has a plug-in one, odds are it's going to be 2 to 3 feet off the hallway floor, and that's fine. 5 feet, they say that the air mixes so equally that basically about mid-level, where the regular air we breathe and the carbon monoxide blends with it, is about where it should be. And then finally, ceiling level is fine as well. The thing here you got to remember is most homes have some sort of draft air movement in there. So the air and the carbon monoxide do mix very freely. So the selling concept here is just have one, and then beyond that, follow the manufacturer's recommendation for that specific one. And oftentimes, by the way, they're combos. So there's smoke alarms
and carbon monoxide alarms. So you're going to depend on the device you have, where you're going to go ahead and install that.
Thank you again. All right, so Albert here is asking us, do you also do inspections for the chimney? If so, what does that entail of?
I can't say that we specifically inspect the integrity of the chimney. That would just be something we'd recommend to a contractor. However, we do home wildfire assessments, basically making sure that people are prepared. So that process starts at ocfa.org. The resident basically starts off with some generic questions that weeds them down to some answers, and then finally an appointment with somebody to physically come out and walk their property and do a home wildfire assessment. So at that point, they could possibly look at, okay, we see visible cracks, or you don't have an ember screen on the top. Those are obvious things we can see from the outside. Our fire inspectors aren't going to be coming to the inside of your home to look up in your chimney to see if there's any breaks in the mortar or excessive buildup of the carbon, but they will do an exterior check, and this is mainly geared towards the wildfire prevention.
Thank you. We had this question, and I think you probably touched on this in the presentation. Is there any ongoing or planned community wildfire mitigation efforts?
Is there any ongoing plan, you said?
Ongoing or planned community wildfire mitigation efforts. It's a mouthful.
That is. So if I think I understand your question correctly, in terms of the fuel mitigation is a year-long project. We have our crews and equipment, which basically consists of the bulldozers and our hand crews. So they're oftentimes all throughout the downtime of the year when they're not physically fighting fire, they're doing fuel mitigation, prescribed burns, fire roads, which are basically fire breaks. So when you see a fire road, that's there for a reason. It's access, but it's also to provide a fire break between the fuels. So all year long, in the conjunction with Edison and the electrical poles, they have a lot of work to do with fuel mitigation. In terms of community involvement with that, I'd encourage people to get involved with their HOAs and keep on top of that, make sure the contracts they have are being executed. And if there's any concerns, you can contact, again, Orange County Fire, and they can come out and take a look. But the HOAs in general, they do a great job because there's a collective concern there and people are voicing their opinions in addition to the legality of it. And then finally, for the individuals, it's going to be more of a mitigation and prevention at your home, like we discussed. And then finally, the stats are up to 90% approximately of all wildfires in California started by humans. So whether it's a hot, sunny, windy day and not using tools with metal blades, not discarding cigarettes, making sure chains are tied up on your cars when you're towing something, those little things they seem like, but on a hot, windy, dry, red flag day, those are oftentimes the things that start these fires that we see. So we have a lot of personal responsibility we can take by just recognizing where we live, what kind of day it is, and deciding to do something differently or wait until it's a better day to do it.
This is a kind of unique question, I thought, from Pam. Do you have a team to handle rescue wildlife during a wildfire?
No, we don't have a dedicated wildlife rescue team. However, some of our favorite posts on social media are the opportunities we get to save wildlife. As you can imagine, wildfires have been around a lot longer than we have, and they know to run as quickly as they can or fly. The ones that can't, that we come upon, absolutely. We take into account life, property, and the environment in that order as well. So as long as we can manage all those and mitigate the risk involved with the rescue, we do. What we do rely on, though, is our partners through the animal care agencies, and in the canyons, there's a large animal rescue team that organizes. So in certain pockets of the Orange County where there are, for example, cattle or large animals, they have a very strong connection to each other, the trailers, they have a plan and a large animal rescue team that will come in and take care of that. However, this again goes back. If it's a red flag day or red flag week, it might be something we're thinking about. Can I relocate my horses now and let them ride out the week at somebody else's ranch? I mean, because a large animal rescue team can only do so much the same way firefighters can only do so much. They have to do what they can with what they have. They're an amazing team, but we all still have to think about, I know it might seem crazy to preventively move animals to another ranch or another area outside of the danger zone, but it's something to think about. So when that week comes or day comes, that you can rest easy if you evacuate.
Thank you very much. And This is a question here that was asked. How can we order a defensible space report?
A defensible space report. I can't speak that specific name. However, if you go to ocfa.org and then seek out our community risk reduction department, they would be the ones that would be generating anything regarding that. So and community risk reduction is a new name for fire prevention.
Okay. This question, let me see if I can get through this one here with you. It says, many people are burning wood and even trash in their backyards, creating lots of toxic smoke and of course embers. So why is the fire authority allowing this risky behavior? I haven't seen that in South Orange County, but is it happening?
We do have, it does happen. And in terms of wood burning, whether outdoor fireplaces or loggias, et cetera, there are rules they do have to follow via the building code and uniform fire code. So we do have pathways to approach the homeowner and inform them of the requirements, for example, having an outdoor fireplace and how far it has to be away from a home, having a hose nearby, ember screens on them, et cetera. The trash burning is not something that's allowed. So yeah, at any time somebody has a concern about an illegal burn, essentially, that's definitely a time to give us a call and we'll go out there and deal with that.
Thank you very much. For the sake of time, looking through some of these questions, I think maybe they might be touched on some of the other pieces here. So maybe we should move on to the second half of your presentation then.
Sounds good. All right, so this part we're going to get onto is water safety and drowning prevention. Continue on. So we'll get down and dirty here because I know we're coming up on time, but basically what is drowning? The ABCs of water safety and signs of distress. Continuing. So what is drowning? So there is some confusion on the current terminology for drowning. For us, it is the process of respiratory impairment from submersion or immersion in a liquid. So what that means is there are two outcomes of drowning. One is fatal and one is non-fatal. So what we used to refer to as drowning, meaning fatal, is not the case anymore. We have a non-fatal drowning and we have fatal drownings. We're trying to recognize that the process was happening, meaning they were drowning, but the outcome was different. So we don't want to minimize the fact that a drowning happened just because the person survived. So we want to capture the fatal and the non-fatal. Continuing. So did you know drowning is the leading cause of accidental death for children under the age of 5? So as of yesterday, again, I ran this report 24 hours ago, the total number of drownings this year for Orange County Fire is 69. Of those, 24 were fatal and 45 were not fatal. In the 2 weeks between me capturing data, that number went from 23 to 24. So it gave me pause yesterday as I reworked the wording here. And what gave me extra pause was the 0 to 4-year-olds, 28 incidents. A few weeks ago, when I wrote this up originally, there was 2 fatalities, and as of yesterday, there's a 3rd. So for me, that hit home. Just recognizing that changing one number was a big deal. 50-year-olds and above, about 18 incidents, 12 of which are fatal. So those are our 2 biggest groups we're capturing there. And then what are the contributing factors for the kiddos? Lapse in supervision, lack of barriers. And then for the adults, intoxication continues to be one of our biggest contributing factors. Continuing on. So a child can drown in less than 2 inches of water. There was maybe 2 months ago, I was on the engine and I saw a call go out somewhere else in the county, and the drowning call came in for somebody in a shower. It was a 2-year-old in a shower. It just basically just showed this example here with 2 inches of lesser water and the kiddo can drown. But for the most part here for us, again, sunny Southern California where we live, backyard pools or spas comprise 27 of these drownings. Community pools or spas, 25. In the ocean or bay, 14 of those calls. So we can see these pools, where we live, we love it, but there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with that for us. Next page. And just honing in, an infant takes 30 seconds or less to lose consciousness, and a child 2 minutes or less. That's about the time it takes you to walk in to grab another drink, about the time it takes you to send a text, about the time it takes you to turn and have a conversation and turn back. That story, those examples there are heard over and over again. I just turned away for a moment. This is when it happens. The brain can suffer irreparable damage in 5 minutes and brain death in 10 minutes. So a little side note there, if a child is missing, check the water first and then go back and do the rest of the check. Next slide. So the ABCs of water safety. These are what we stress to everybody. It's active adult supervision, barriers, and classes. On the next slides, we'll take a look at those. Active adult supervision. What does that mean? It means children are within eyesight and reach of the person responsible for their safety. So that means you are able to grab that person should something go wrong. We strongly suggest assigning a water watcher. What is that? For an example, you have a 3-hour pool party, whether it's your home or a community pool, and there's adults, there's children, there's barbecuing, there's food, there's drinks. Have one person stand aside with no phone, no drink in their hands, nobody talks to them for, let's say, 15 minutes. To assign that person water watcher status, you can be anything. It can be a flower lei, it can be a wristband, it can be a hat, it can be a glow stick. Whatever it is that lets everybody else know, do not go up and initiate a conversation with that person. They are watching the water for their turn. Now imagine that, 15 minutes for the entire party. You rotate, you might do that one time for the party, and there's always eyes on that pool. It's a very simple way to mitigate these risks. And actually at OCFA, we have a water watcher tag, which is kind of an example. We're happy to hand those out, but these are something you can easily assign in any way you'd like to do at home. Make sure it's a sober adult. Somebody able to swim, and they avoid the social activities, reading, cooking, any distractions. They have one job to do, and that's to keep those people in the pool safe. Continuing. Barriers, multiple layers of protection. So in 2017, the Pool Safety Act required 2 of 7 safety features, and this is usually picked up during the home inspection, and maybe one of the things that is addressed as a no negotiation repair or fix. But basically isolating the pool and spa from the home and play areas, whether it's safety covers, self-closing fences, self-latching gates, gate alarms, door alarms, motion detection devices. There has to be something in place, 2 of those, 2 of the 7 safety features for that to be signed off. So closing gift ideas, could this be something where you, as part of your gift, I know you have creative minds out there, much more creative than I, but maybe it's a water motion alarm, an alarm that actually goes in the pool, and if there's any disturbance in the water, it alarms. Maybe it's the gate alarm. It's just something that can kind of say, hey, we know you have a pool. We value you as a family, as a client, as a lifelong person in our lives. Here's something to keep your family safe. And then finally, maintain and check those regularly. Just like smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, people don't like the nuisance alarms when the batteries stop or when it needs to be replaced. So we need to encourage them to set up something on their calendar or phone reminder to stay on top of those battery changes and make sure the barriers are in place. Continuing. And then finally, classes, learning to swim. It doesn't necessarily mean just kiddos, these adults as well. As we saw, that category of 50 plus is a large percentage of our drownings. So learning to swim as a child or an adult, anytime. And then teaching and enforcing pool safety rules, being the parent that says, hey, here's the rules of the house, and we're going to abide by them. And then finally, CPR, and if possible, how to use an AED, taking first aid classes, learning and practicing rescue techniques. And I tell you, the CPR concept, at the very worst case, you can look online for what we call sidewalk CPR or compression only CPR. If we can get your hands on the chest and pushing hard, fast, and deep, we consider that success, because all too often we show up to calls and nothing's been done because somebody's nervous about what to do. We want hands on the chest. And I tell you, look up sidewalk CPR or compression only CPR. We teach it in 1 minute, sometimes at the malls, airports, et cetera. We'll have classes we provide to the public as you walk by, just to make sure we get somebody's hands on the chest. That is a game changer in itself. Next slide. And then drain safety. The newer drain standards account for these kiddos with long hair, as you can see in the picture there, not getting their hair sucked in. So there are new drains that address those issues. And as part of your inspection, or if you have a pool inspection, they will address that. But I just saw, actually, during my drowning statistic review yesterday, we did have one attributed to hair stuck in the drain. It happens. And imagine how scary that is. Boy, you don't want to be the pool owner that has a drain where somebody's hair gets stuck in there and they physically cannot get off the bottom of the pool floor. So keep those in mind. Install the compliant safety drain covers. There's automatic shut-off systems for the pumps. Have everybody in your family know where the pool and spa pump is, so if something happens, you can turn it off quickly. But it's something that seems innocuous, but it has horrible outcomes. Continuing. And then drowning myths. So I'll hear them. They'll be out there splashing, yelling for help. I'll hear them screaming, and that is not the case. If a person drowns, their arms will be kind of moving downward. They're not going to be upward and waving. If they're drowning, they're not going to be screaming. They're going to be gasping to breathe in between bobbing up and down, water going in their, in their lungs. It's not a noisy process, and they won't be splashing. They're going to be bobbing and slowly drowning. So whether it's the ocean, the bay, the pool, just remember that drowning is silent. Next slide. And then flotation devices. Life vests are recommended for anyone who can't swim or are not strong swimmers, especially as you see, at the bays, the beaches, rivers, etc. Make sure that if you do get a life vest for somebody, it has to be U.S. Coast Guard approved. There'll be a tag in there that says that. And that same tag will talk about the specific age and weight for that life vest to make sure that it fits appropriately, because having a life vest that does not fit appropriately can do just as much harm by letting the person basically float at the top of the water with nobody seeing them and having no way to reach above it. And remember, the flotation devices are definitely not a substitute for active adult supervision whatsoever. We need to have active eyes on the pool at all times. Next slide. Once out of the water, make sure 911 has been called immediately. Even if the person has responded, they're just coughing up some water, they say, I'm okay, call 911, let the paramedics come out and evaluate the person, because there can be secondary issues later down the road. And finally, of course, if the person is unconscious, begin CPR. Get those hands on the chest, do those compressions, deep, hard, and fast in the middle of the chest, right at nipple line. Just have some hands on the chest, keep the hands on the chest till we show up. Continuing. And finally, that's it. So that's the end of the water safety part and the wildfire part.
Thank you, Sean. That's some great information. And we do have a few more questions. They're not specific to the last half here, but I'd like to touch on them because people were wondering. One of the questions we had here was, do the metal vents, I think they mean the mesh over the vents, need to be installed by a professional?
No. So most of us have the vents in place up there. So this is basically just a mesh that goes over it. So if you're handy or want to hire a handy fixer person to come over to do that, but the concept being just having that entire opening covered with that 3/8 inch metal mesh. The caveat, these are usually where? High up on the house, maybe second story. Ideally, we don't encourage people to get up on these ladders and do this work alone. So if you're going to do it, make sure it's something you're comfortable with. If not, call in help to do it or a professional. But a lot of this work is done up on ladders. So again, don't do that work alone, because we have a lot of incidents where people fall off ladders and aren't discovered till later. So all these home improvement projects, we love them. We want you to get involved, get somebody else to help you, but make sure you do it professionally and safely.
Thank you. Is there any research into cloud formation or inducing artificial rain kind of technologies that could be a boon to putting out especially large fires? Interesting.
That's a great question. And I actually just got a similar question this week. I don't have that background expertise to even talk to that, kind of like the climate change. We can acknowledge that things are hot and dry right now, but when it comes down to the ideology of climate change, I know that's a political matter, an environmental matter, and I wouldn't want to speak to that. However, against where we are, a lot of what we see in our damage comes from is the wind events. So I'm not sure how that would relate to seeding the clouds and also mitigating a wind event, which basically originates out of state in the Great Basin coming back towards us. There's a lot of territory that's covered with the buildup of these wind events, but it's a great question. I like outside the box thinking, and we have to think outside the box and think together. So thanks for the question. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Speaking of thinking out of the box, here's someone that asked a question here that if all the appliances in the house are electric, do we still need to have carbon monoxide detectors?
It's a great question. So yeah, as you're talking about, carbon monoxide detects basically the unburned side of the fuels related to gas. And that could be a water heater, your appliances inside, your dryers. There's lots of, and your car as well. So we still recommend it because at the very least, the car does have emission of carbon monoxide, as we know. And I believe again, I'll defer to your expert side, but in terms of requirement for home sales, they are still a requirement as far as I know, unless something changed. So yeah, absolutely we recommend it. And again, let's just say for some reason, somebody comes over to your house and decides to bring a propane heater inside the house for their camping with their kiddos in the tent night. We respond to stranger things. The truth is stranger than fiction concept is what we respond to. So these things might seem crazy and not going to happen, but they do happen. So we want to be prepared for the worst case scenario. It's a simple fix. They're inexpensive and they do the job.
And last question we actually have here is another one that's outside of the box. Do we have any oil or gas pipelines in Orange County?
There are that parallel the railroad system going down. I can't speak to which, if it's oil or gasoline through there, but yes, there. If you want to consult through the National Railroad Association or BSF, they actually have maps for those in terms of where they are. Because I can't speak to if they traverse every city, every county, and if they have cross pipes off of those. But yes, there is fuel or oil being transported in Orange County.
Thank you very much. I think that was the end of the questions we had in the Q&A there. So I just want to thank you for joining us again today. And thank you to all that OCFA does for Orange County to keep us safe. I'm going to ask everyone if you can join us for tomorrow's presentation, De-escalating intense situations, presented by Harry Drucker. He'll be sharing his experience as a hostage negotiator. Also, one attendee will be randomly selected to win a safety-related prize following each webinar. If you're attending all 5 webinars, you'll be entered to win the grand prize drawing for a Simply Safe Security System Essentials Package. Another mouthful. So we hope to see you all this week. Stay safe out there. Thank you very much, Sean, again.
Thank you for your time. And on behalf of Orange County Fire, thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.